I think we're probably best to start. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Massias. I'm a sales engineer with InterSystems. And for the next 40 minutes or so, I'm going to be talking to you about data visualization and the choices that you have with data visualization. So before we start, just a quick show of hands. How many of you attended the previous session on dashboards? Okay, so a few of you. How many of you are familiar with the DeepSea technology? Right, okay, so a lot of you actually. And how about using DeepSea through third-party technologies like JavaScript and so on? Do any of you have experience with that type of thing in terms of using REST to access DeepSea? Okay, so a lesser amount. So I think there'll be something of interest here to all of you. So a very quick agenda in terms of what we're going to be covering. So I'm going to start by giving a very, very quick overview of data visualization. Why does it make any difference? Then I'll talk about the options you have at data visualization with DeepSea, which broadly speaking are two different things. So first of all, it's accessing DeepSea data using the inbuilt DeepSea dashboards. And the second bit, which is really going to occupy most of our time in terms of presentation and demo, is about using third-party technologies in order to access DeepSea data. I'll give demos all along this session, all throughout the session. Then I'll summarize, and at the end of this, I'll be open to a Q&A session. So data visualization, why does it matter? Well, some of these things are a bit obvious. Some of them are a bit more subtle. First of all, patterns are very, very quickly deduced when you're visualizing data. So when you move away from the numbers and you start to look at graphical visualizations of data, then you can see exceptions and outliers much easier. It also expedites decision making because you can start to look at visualization of data, look for anomalies, drill down into that data to the point where you can actually make a business decision. And the final point over here is that it's a better mechanism for communicating business performance with your peers and with management. So a little bit of background of data visualization. Joe Gallant, who's the product manager for this, who's at the back of the room, went through this in quite a lot of depth. This is an area that has been exposed to a huge amount of research. I'm not going to tell you about everything over here. I'm just going to focus your minds in terms of two of the experts in this kind of area. The first one is Edward Tufte. The second one is Stephen Few. Edward Tufte is credited with creating this thing called the spark line or the trend line. And that can be viewed at the top over here. This graphic over here is looking at stock prices. Yeah, so that's in-time stock prices. The spark line or trend line in the middle shows you intraday variation of the individual stocks. So very quickly you can figure out whether a stock's gone down, it's gone up, or it's remained fairly static during the day. The second graphic over here is known as a bullet chart, which comes from Stephen Few. And this is a way of looking at performance in terms of bands of performance and target. So the central bar over here shows you the actual value. The horizontal bar shows you what the target is. And the bands of shading, which could also be represented in red, amber, green, show you poor performance, good performance, and excellent performance. So within this, for example, I can see that for this company, the revenue is above target and it's excellent. The profit is good but below target. The average order is poor and well below target, so on and so forth. And both of these graphics and data visualizations are also available within DeepSea. Now, one of the things that these two folks agree in is that pie charts are a massively overused way of visualizing data. Okay, so but again, that's their opinion. Okay, there's good reasons for that, and Joe went into a lot of those reasons in the previous session, but they advocate towards not using excessive amounts of pie charts. So let's move into DeepSea. So let's talk about what is DeepSea. So first of all, you need to understand what DeepSea is. DeepSea is an embedded business intelligence technology. It also gives you a wide range of capability to do data visualization with components called widgets. And what you do basically is you configure these widgets and you add them to a dashboard. And then you deliver the dashboards either as a standalone solution, or more typically you embed them within your application. So the dashboards themselves, which are browser-based, make themselves very easy to embed them within your application. And on top of that, it's very important to understand that DeepSea really is broken down into 3 logical parts. The first is the data model. So this is where we store the cube data, the indices, and so on. On top of that, we have a query engine. And the query engine works on a language called MDX. Quick show of hands, how many of you have heard of MDX? Okay, so about a third of you have heard of MDX. MDX stands for multi-dimensional expressions. It's a language which comes from the world of Microsoft, and it's the de facto language for how you query multi-dimensional analytical databases, of which DeepSea is a very good example. So the way that we query the underlying model is using this language called MDX. And the final point, part rather, of DeepSea is the user interface. But as I said, we provide you with an out-of-the-box user interface, which is the dashboards and another component called the analyzer for the power user that gives you the ability to drill down to data. But on top of that, you can build your own user interface, and that's essentially what we're going to be talking about for the rest of the session. But before we do that, let's look at a demonstration of some of the out-of-the-box capability you have with DeepSea. So let me open up the management portal. So within this management portal, which is part of the standard products, it's not displaying over there. Let's have a look. Yeah, why is that not? Apologies about that. That's how that's showing.
Extended or display?
Well, it was showing okay before, I think.
Go to display settings.
Okay. Apologies about this.
Oh, extend. Oh, down.
Yeah. Brilliant. Okay. This. Okay. That should solve that one. So this is the management portal, and this gives me the ability to look at some dashboards. There's a wide range of dashboards available as part of the standard DeepSea products. Many of these dashboards are based around a cube or a cube called Whole Foods. And Whole Foods is a company that sells foods with holes in them, so things like bagels and pretzels and different types of pasta and so on. But what it does, it allows you to look at the capability within DeepSea. So let me show you an example of a dashboard. Okay, so this is a dashboard which consists of 2 widgets. Okay, so these are 2 different ways of visualizing the data. The top is a 3D bar chart, and the bottom one over here is one known as a tree map. So in this 3D bar chart, I can see the sales go up throughout the year. In 2017, obviously, it's still building up. The tree map is particularly good in the sense that it shows me which of these product categories, so this is a company selling different product categories to the market, and it very quickly shows me that most of the sales of this company are down to snack and pasta sales. Okay? And on top of that, these widgets give me filters. It gives me the ability to say, don't show me all the figures for all the products, but let me look at, for example, fruit sales. And then it goes away and shows me the sales of fruit. So I can see that it goes up 2013, then it goes down in 2014, and then it picks up steam again. So that's an example of a dashboard. Another dashboard I'm going to show you is one which uses pie charts, which goes against all the advice given by the pundits. But hey, it's always good to be adverse to that. But what this does really is it kind of shows you something very powerful about visualization, which is, if you look at this, you can immediately see that there's an unusual thing about this. Okay, so what are we looking at over here? This is a sales company. They're selling products out through to people. Okay, they're selling product categories out to people, so candy, cereal, dairy, so on and so forth. And this is looking at the sales of products according to different discount bands. So this is no discounts, 1 to 19% discount. And the one I'm really interested in is the ones which have been heavily discounted. So products that have been sold out there which have undergone a huge amount of discount, which might kind of highlight you to some kind of issue there, if it hasn't been approved, obviously. So what this shows me very quickly is the fact that pasta sales over here have been massively discounted. And the question is why, or alternatively, what transactions had led to that actually happening. So this widget over here allows me to toggle into the table. So this now takes me from the chart into the table itself, and I can drill down into pasta. I can see there's a lot of product being sold at a high discount level over there for pasta. But pasta is not a product, it's a product category. If I drill down into pasta, it breaks it down into penne, so on and so forth. And I can see that ultimately the issue here is with the sale of penne pasta. But even at that point, I'm not quite sure what exact transaction has actually led, or transactions perhaps, has led to that particular anomaly. But DeepSea gives me the tools to be able to do that. So another DeepSea tool is Analyzer. And within Analyzer, which I'm going to open up now, I can get a more detailed view of the data. An Analyzer is a product that will give to a power user. And within the Analyzer, I can see the figures as I saw them within the dashboard. I have more control in terms of being able to slice and dice information. But what I can do over here is I can drill down to pasta, which is the problem area. I can see that this cell over here is the one that's created that anomaly in terms of the data visualization. And from there, I can do the following, which is to create a detail listing or drill through. And at this point over here, I'm going from the DeepSea cube to the underlying transactional data. So this is looking at your underlying transactional system. And this then shows me the anomaly I'm seeing is down to this transaction at the bottom over here, which is a sale in New York on the 18th of January of a lot of product which was discounted by 90%. So the question then is, why did that happen? That's the action I would have to take, but the visualization has given me a view so that I can act upon that. Another thing to show you within this, actually, is the query. So this is a visualization of the data. This is not the model itself. But this over here allows me to look at the current query. And this current query over here, if you start and you look at the first word over here, select, you might be mistaken to think it looks a little bit like SQL. It's not SQL at all, it's MDX. This is the multidimensional expressions that I was talking about, which is the language which is a de facto standard for multidimensional analytical databases that actually hits the cube in order to grab that. And this is the type of language that we're going to be using when we bolt on a third-party tool on top of a DeepSea cube. So we've seen a few widget types, okay? But DeepSea gives you a very, very wide range of widgets. It gives you tables, a very comprehensive list of different charts. It's got these things called scorecards, of which this is an example over here, down here, where you can consolidate different types of visualizations. There's also different types of meters. There's even a Google Maps API interface, so you can start to chart data out in a Google map if you have coordinate-based data. And finally, but very, very importantly, there's a widget type called a portlet. And a portlet is where you decide that you want to build your own type of widgets. And you can do that within the underlying technology, and then that will become available as a portlet that then you can use as a widget within your dashboard. So in essence, the portlet is the way that you extend the already comprehensive range of widgets that you have within the product. But it might be that you don't want to do that. It might be that you want to be able to use a different type of technology for a variety of different reasons. It could be that perhaps you want to use a particular type of widget which isn't available within DeepSea, and perhaps your development team isn't trained in terms of building portlets. It could be that perhaps you're using an alternative technology already. It could be that you're your transaction application is based around JavaScript, and you want to embed JavaScript charts within that JavaScript application. So you want to keep it all in the same technology. It could be that perhaps you want to tightly couple your transactional UI with your analytics. What do I mean by that? What I mean by that is that perhaps you don't want to come up with a dashboard or a pivot table within your application. What you want to do is query the DeepSea model, grab a certain number of metrics, and then represent those metrics within your transactional system. But remember, the DeepSea dashboards address most of the requirements that most people will find. So what have we done in terms of making it easy for people to use third-party technologies? We've done a couple of things. The first thing is we've exposed DeepSea through a series of RESTful services. And the second thing we've done specifically for JavaScript developers is we've delivered a DeepSea JavaScript library with a number of objects on it that allows you to fire queries against the underlying engine and retrieve the data. So let's look at the first aspect, which is the DeepSea REST services. So the DeepSea REST services are used when you're using a different type of technology, or even the same technology, really. So technologies like JavaScript, technologies like .NET, technologies like Java as well, and also cache. All of these technologies have got strong capabilities in terms of generating REST clients, which is what you need in order to be able to invoke REST services on a REST server. And in the case of cache object script, I think it's worth mentioning as well that a very typical implementation architecture is to have a mirror pair of cache servers. We have a primary and a backup, and then you have an asynchronous member, which is a near real-time replica of the mirror pair. And that's where you might house your DeepSea cubes on your asynchronous member. And then you have RESTful invocation from your primary member within the mirror through to the DeepSea cubes in the asynchronous member. And the reason for that being is that you're taking the load off the transactional system and putting it onto an asynchronous member. Broadly speaking, the REST services are broken down into two different types. The first type is data services. So data services allows you to, for example, execute an MDX query, execute a pivot table, do drill through. Drill through, if you remember, is this operation where you go from the cube through to the underlying transactions, which is what I showed you a couple of minutes ago. The other type of service available are metadata services or info services. So things like, what pivot tables do I have available within my system? What cubes do I have within my system? So on and so forth. And both of these services typically is what you need in order to build a sensible data-driven application. An application that can say, show me the cubes available within the system, and then let's fire some queries against this particular cube. So let's look at a demonstration of this. So with this, we have a test page, which is available as part of the product. It's a DeepSea.REST client, and this allows you to invoke the different services. But let me show you this in software, because it's always much more interesting. And this time we can see it, which is probably a good thing. And what I'm going to do over here is open up this REST test page. So this is part of standard product. You'll have this yourselves, and this gives you a list of the different APIs available, or rather the different services available. And you see that some of them are data services, some of them are info or metadata services. So what I'm going to do over here is I'm going to start off by firing in MDX executes. And this MDX executes is going to require a JSON object, which looks like this. And we're going to paste this in and explain to you what it means. So the first, can everybody see that? The first part of that JSON object, the key rather, is what we want to invoke, which is MDX. And the second, the value of that object is the MDX itself. So select from Whole Foods. Now, this is going to return a response from the server over here. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you what that response looks like with another tool available within DeepSea called the MDX query tool. Okay, so this is available in the management portal. And what this allows me to do is fire some MDX to see what the result is. So what I'm going to do over here is I'm going to cut and paste the same MDX. I'm going to push through the REST client, and you'll see that what this returns is one cell. So select from whole food gives you the top level of that particular cube. Now when I fire that from the REST client, you're going to see something similar coming back and more. So this is all a JSON return. So there's an info section over here that tells you when it was executed. It tells you what the MDX I executed is. It also shows you the column count and the row count. So it tells you how many columns were returned, how many rows returned. It tells you a little bit about the axes, and then ultimately it gives you the cell data over here, which is the data coming back. So it shows you the logical value for that. It also shows you the format, if any format is applied to that data, which would be the case in the case of a pivot table. And then it gives you the value formatted, which is just comma separating the thousands. So with this, basically with a technology that could act as a REST client, it could grab the data and it would know what the rows are, what the columns are, what the value of the cell is, and then be able to represent that data either in a table in .NET, for example, or in a chart in JavaScript, so on and so forth. A slightly more complex MDX query is the following. So I'm going to cut and paste this in. And then I'm going to show you what it generates with the MDX query tool. So this is the MDX. I'm going to execute it. And MDX, you can read it. You know, so it's basically saying select channel.members. So channel is channel to sales, so online, retail, no channel, that type of thing. So saying select the channel on the columns and then the product categories on the rows. That's basically what this MDX does, and this is what it generates. It gives you the channels and the columns down here, and then the product categories on the rows. And with the REST client tool, a test tool, if I submit this, it gives me the same type of thing. So it shows me the MDX query here. It also shows me it returns 4 columns, which are the channels, 8 rows, a row count of 8, which are the product categories, and then it goes ahead to come up with the axes values, which will be all channels, no channel, online, and retail. And then as I scroll down here, ultimately I'll get the data. So these are the cell data. And again, if you have a technology that can act as a REST client, then you can grab this JSON object and then paint whatever UI component you want with the data coming back from that. The next thing I want to show you is executing a pivot table. So this is a different service, and I have a pivot table which is part of the standard product, which is a bar chart, one called bar charts. It's not a bar chart, it's actually a pivot table. And within this, when I execute this pivot table, it shows me what the MDX for that pivot table is, which is this bit over here. Then it tells me it's returned 1 column and 6 rows and the rest of the data. And the significant thing over here is that within a pivot table, you can apply formatting, and that formatting will come back as a response to this query. And you can see it over here. This is a cell where the logical value is 2195. This is the format which is to be applied, so it prepends $1, and this is the value format that you end up with, you know. So there's a distinction here between the logical and the formatted value of the data. Now, on top of these, we can also look at some of the info queries. So, for example, I can do info dashboards, submit that, and that shows me a list of all the dashboards that exist within that namespace. So I've got my basic dashboards. I've got my discount dashboard, this one over here. This is the one that I just used a few minutes ago to be able to look at the pie charts and that type of thing. On top of that, I can also say, show me the pivot table. So info pivots, and then it gives me a list of all the pivot tables available within that system. I can also, for example, start to look at the structure of the cubes itself. So by looking at filters, filter data source, I can say, show me anything within a particular cube, which I'm going to select rather Whole Foods, and this will give me anything which could possibly act as a filter. So within Whole Foods, it comes back and says, I've got things like my region, comments, years sold, months sold, days sold, product categories, product names, and so on. So these are all the different dimensional elements that I could potentially use as a filter. And then I can go beyond that with a different API call in order to look at a particular filter like product category in order to derive what the members within a product category are. Okay, so broadly speaking, we have everything we need there to be able to build an application which is separated from the DeepSea cube. So I have the ability to interrogate metadata and the ability to grab data as well through MDX. But on top of that, if you're building applications with JavaScript, you might need something more than that to make your life easier. And that's why we built the DeepSea JavaScript library. It's a file called deepsea.js. It's part of the standard product. And it gives you a number of objects. It gives you the ability to build JavaScript UIs much quicker against the DeepSea backend. So we have a DeepSea connection object, a DeepSea results set object. A result set allows you to fire MDX, amongst other things. There's also a layer of abstraction on top of that called the DeepSea data controller, for which there's a test page. And the DeepSea data controller allows you to do things like drill down and drill through with relative ease compared to doing all directly from the result set and having to handcraft your own MDX. There's also a utilities object as well. And there's a test page, an HTML page, which again is part of the out-of-the-box product that shows you some of the charts that they can build with this. Now, in terms of JavaScript charts, it's important to note that there's a wide range of JavaScript charting libraries out there. These are some of them. D3 is a very popular one. Stands for data-driven documents. It gives you a really wide range of different types of visualizations of data, different chart types and so on, an extensive list of those. You can also grab loads of source code out there. There's loads of source code available in order to figure out how to configure these different charts. amCharts or HighCharts are very popular. Google's got their own. Chartist is one I found on the web. It's a very, very simple one. Seems to be quite popular. What's good about Chartist, and probably the main thing that's good at, is the fact that it's responsive from the word go. What I mean by responsive is that it scales automatically through to different sizes of devices, through different form factors. So in lots of these JavaScript libraries, you need to write CSS to be able to scale to different types of devices. With Chartist, it kind of does it out of the box. But on the other hand, it's very, very simple. So there's just a bar chart, a line chart, and an area chart, and that's all you get. So let's look at a demonstration of some of these. So I'm going to show you what's available. And you'll be able to do this. If you have a copy of our technology, you'll be able to do this yourselves. So third-party charts. If I just minimize that to that so you can see the whole thing. So this is looking at firing this MDX query over here and then showing me sales of this wholesale foods product across different countries. This is an amCharts chart. And if I wanted to change, for example, what I'm charting over here, I could change the MDX. So if I'm familiar with MDX, I can decide that I want to look at product categories down there instead of countries, and the way I do that is just by changing the MDX. So I say select product category .members, and then run that. Oh, it helps if I can spell. And now I'm looking at the different product categories. So this is an example of an amCharts bar chart. This is a 3D bar chart. This is a line chart coming from this JavaScript library called amCharts. And line chart with markers, so you can glide over here and basically look at the individual markers. This last one over here is a bit cooler, if you like that kind of thing, obviously. And this is from D3 JavaScript library. And this is a sortable bar chart. So what this one does is it allows you to sort the bars according to the amount within that bar, or alternatively, just to sort them according to the legend. Okay, so, and again, if you look at these libraries over here, just simply amCharts and D3, you'll find that there's hundreds of different chart types available with these products. So the next thing I'm going to show you actually is the code required in order to do this. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up my IDE of choice, which is Eclipse. So this is Eclipse over here, and within Eclipse I can do a variety of different things, but as a cache developer, because I've got Atelier installed as a plugin over here, I can do my cache-based development. So this transactions.cls is a good old cache class, and this is the underlying transactional persistence for that DeepSea cube. This over here, cube.cls, is my Whole Foods cube. Okay, so I'm able to develop some of this through a combination of management portal and also Atelier. But what I can also do as well is I can actually build HTML and JavaScript. So if I look at my third-party charts, just to show you a few things, first of all is I include some JavaScript libraries. So over here, I'm including amcharts.js. I'm also including D3. So this is the other library that I use for the sortable bar charts. I'm also including DeepSea.js. So this is my DeepSea JavaScript library. And very simply what I do over here is down to a few lines. I create a DeepSea connection, passing it the username, password, and so on, which will be specified within the UI. Then I create a DeepSea result set where I pass in a DeepSea connection, and then I run the MDX query, where the query is within the UI. And then the second parameter over here is the function that will be invoked beyond running the MDX query. This function over here is what actually draws the chart. This is what takes the result set, which will be a JavaScript array, and takes our JavaScript array and generates another array in the right kind of format for the type of chart that I want to be able to visualize. And I'll show you that in a couple of minutes with a different type of chart. So that's a view of the third-party charting capabilities using amCharts and D3. The next thing I'm going to show you is a test page on top of the data controller. And as I said before, the data controller is a layer of abstraction on top of the result set that allows you to do things like drill down into data, drill through, and so on. So let me open up the test page for the data controller, which is over here. And in this data controller over here, this is the MDX. Okay? This is what's being returned from the MDX. But then a number of buttons allows you to invoke the different methods of the data controller. So for example, I can go into this and say, these are sales figures for different regions. Perhaps I want to drill down into Europe. Europe is row number 2. So I specify drill down into position 2. Then it breaks down Europe into all these countries. England still appears there because we haven't done Brexit yet, so we're still part of Europe, technically speaking. And then I decide I want to drill down into Europe, okay? And then this breaks it down into the different cities in Europe for which we've got sales. And then if for whatever reason I want to look at the underlying transactions within London, I can say, let me run a listing. And running a listing is basically a way of drilling through to the underlying transactions. And I'm going to start on row 1, column 1, so this cell over here, and end up on this cell as well. A number of different listings are available, but I'm going to go for the defaults. And then when I run the listing, it goes ahead and shows me the underlying transaction. So that's what the data control does. It's a layer of abstraction on top of the result set that allows you to do things like drill down and drill through with relative ease. Okay, so So let's look at something slightly different, which is a demo scenario, so a more of a practical case. So imagine that this Whole Foods company decides that they want to build a new dashboard. And it so happens that they've got a lot of skills in amCharts and JavaScript development. So they decide they want to build something that allows management to look at highly discounted products, which is what we're looking at before within DeepSea. So I'm going to show you the amCharts version of that. And they want to visualize the data using a thing called a pyramid chart, which very intuitively looks like a pyramid, where the different sections relate to different categories of product or channel and so on. The data is all held within the DeepSea cubes. The data, as we already said, is accessible through REST. But because I'm going to build this with JavaScript, I'm going to use the DeepSea JavaScript library to be able to invoke those methods that we've seen already. So let's look at a demonstration of that. So if I show you the end product, the end product's the following. So this is a pyramid chart. This is the pyramid chart, and this is looking at very, very specific MDX. So it's looking at products which have been discounted in excess of 50%. And this pyramid chart over here is delivered by amCharts, and you can click on it, you can glide over it, look at the value, and so on. So very quickly over here, I can see that this area over here is pretty huge compared to the others. So sale of pasta, highly discounted, seems to be out of proportion with everything else, which is what we saw in DeepSea as well, but we're just seeing it in a different UI. And how do I build this? I go back to Eclipse, open up the file, and very similar to what we've seen before, we actually include the amCharts JavaScript library. I also include another JavaScript file called funnel.js. Now, funnel is the basic chart type for the pyramid. A funnel is basically just an upside-down pyramid. That's what it is, and that's the name of the JavaScript control. And then also include DeepSea.js, which gives me the DeepSea connection, the DeepSea result sets, all that kind of stuff. And over here, I do something pretty similar to the standard examples. I create a query, which is MDX, and you can see the select, so on and so forth. And at the end of this, I have percentage filter, which is standard MDX for filtering the results. So this is filtering based on discount levels of in excess of 50%. Now, how would I build this? Typically, the way I'd build this is by using a tool such as DeepSea in order to create a pivot table that looks like the right kind of thing, and then generate the MDX based on that. So that's how I build this. And then beyond that, what I do is I create a DeepSea connection, passing it credentials and server name and so on and so forth. Then I create a result set, and I run the MDX query using this method, run MDX query, and then the second parameter which invokes this function. Now, if I look at a little bit more at this function, what this function does is the following. Okay, so this for loop over here goes through the result set, and it generates a JavaScript array called chart data. So it massages the data to get into the right format, so then I can assign that JavaScript array to the chart. So what I do then is I create a new chart object. And as I said, the pyramid chart is based on the funnel chart, so that's why I create a new funnel chart. And then what makes it into a pyramid chart is the fact I say chart.rotate is equal to true. So the funnel rotated becomes a pyramid. And then this line over here, chart.dataProvider, is where I specify the relationship between that property and the JavaScript array that I've generated from the results set that was retrieved from DeepSea. Okay, so it's pretty simple to put this together, even for folks who are not that familiar with JavaScript. You can generally follow the code pretty easily. Okay, so in summary, data visualization is key really to creating an application which is more valuable. DeepSea provides a very wide range of visualization capability. There was a session before this that explored that. I've shown you some of that, but I'd urge that you look at it in greater depth because it is quite impressive what the breadth of visual capability we have within DeepSea. But we give you choices for a variety of different reasons. You're working with different technologies or whatever. And with those choices, you can use our RESTful services on top of DeepSea, and also, optionally, our JavaScript libraries if you're building a JavaScript-based visualization environment. Okay, so that's all I wanted to cover. So if you have any questions, I'd be more than happy to take them. Okay, questions, anybody? Does it make sense?
Is this an indication that maybe the widget library won't be expanded? For instance, there's more of a reliance on using using other.
Okay, so shall I repeat the question actually, because just for the recording, the question, I guess, and correct me if I'm wrong. The question is this a reflection that the widget types available at DeepSea aren't going to be expanding over a period of time? And I think no, that's not. It's not a reflection of that at all. I mean, we still kind of going to be investing in building out the capabilities within DeepSea in terms of the different type of widget types and so on. It's purely a reflection of the fact that we just want to give people choices. That's really what it's all about.
But it also means, something there. It also means that if there is something that you want that we haven't done, that doesn't mean you can't do it. Like you don't have to wait for us to add a certain chart type. And just to add an additional part there, if you then do this, you could then use the portlet capability, and now it shows up as one of the widget types for you. So it's a combination of using the REST service and the portlet user interface.
Okay. Any other questions? It's getting towards the end of the day, I guess. Okay, so where do you go from here? Okay, so there's myself. I'm going to be around for the rest of the conference. Joe Gallant at the back is our product manager for DeepSea, amongst other technologies. So Joe's going to be available for the rest of the conference as well. Please visit the Tech Exchange. Quick show of hands, how many of you have been to the Tech Exchange? Yeah, not that many, actually. So I'd urge you to go there, really, because there's some really cool demos on specifically this. If you want to learn more about this, that'll be a good place to go. In terms of the learning, there's lots of learning capability. There's the online learning, there's classroom-based training. There's also very, very good documentation on the DeepSea technology, but also ways of using DeepSea using REST and the JavaScript libraries that we've described so far. If you have a sales engineer, I'm sure that beyond the conference, they'd be more than happy to help you to explore this side of the technology. And please complete the survey, which is available on the online app. So, okay, without further ado, I'd like to thank you all. I hope you've found it of some interest.
There's an event in the Tech Exchange right now.
Right, okay, so yeah, there's an event in the Tech Exchange right now between 5 and 7. Okay, and that'd be a good opportunity to go to that as well. So thank you very much, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the conference.